Mobile gaming companies do not care about you enjoying yourself. I feel like some people need someone to say this to them. I've been gone a little while, but today I was linked this video here, which we'll take a look at. But I really want to just make it very clear that these gaming companies, primarily the ones that focus on mobile gaming, they do not care about their players. And by that I mean they care about retention, they care about your money, but they don't care about the experience that they're giving you. I've got a few things that I want to show you guys today for anyone that does primarily or only play mobile games. But I really wanted to take a look at this video here first that was posted on the Dragon City social media because it was sent to me. I think that this video really encapsulates everything that is wrong with mobile gaming and just the general way that these, I guess, companies or teams look at their players. Now, I'm not blaming the person in this video or the marketing guys specifically, technically, but this was a hard one to watch, and this has caused a lot of people to be really quite angry. And I mean, let's just watch this. I won't play it with the audio. You should go and check it out yourself on their original Instagram page because it is their video. But let's just talk about this because this was a new update that they released not too long ago with stickers and stuff like that, but it's actually a beta thing, whatever. There's lots of details. But they uploaded this. It said, tips for your sticker album in the game. Trust me, this will help, he says as he winks. Number 1, forget the real world. 2, when you don't get the right sticker, channel your anger. 3, don't be sad about your missing stickers. Remember, you have the diamond shop. Then it tells you to go and open up the sticker sets by going into the diamond shop. And that is the whole video. So it's really quite short, but there is a lot happening in this that I'm going to go through that really sums up everything that we'll go through today. So their first point about 1, forget the real world. I appreciate their attempt at humor, but this is, you know, some people are going to take this quite badly when you consider the fact that there are people wasting a hell of a lot of time for really not very much value in these mobile games, and they're not learning anything in mobile games either, but whatever, that's a whatever point. Pretty meaningless, really. And then it's when you don't get the right sticker, and you can see he's playing Dragon City on the iPad there or whatever it is, channel your anger. Let's just hold that for a second. When you don't get the right sticker, channel your anger. So what are they actually talking about here? It's actually a glorified gacha loot box system, but even worse because they've just taken away the loot box and they've just made it completely RNG. So they know that their players are upset that sometimes they're getting drops that aren't what they want. And then they say, but you shouldn't be sad about missing stickers because you can go and get more from the diamond shop. So what they've essentially said in this is, look, we've got an RNG gacha loot box system here with this new sticker system, which you shouldn't be sad about because if you don't get the drops that you want, you can go in and spend tons of money. The problem, on top of everything else with this, is that, in fact, with the previous event, I believe anyway, at least, you weren't guaranteed anything, even if you spent hundreds up to thousands of dollars, which means there are some people playing these events out, opening up these diamond chests where actually they do come with loot boxes, and actually they weren't guaranteed anything, no matter how much they spent monetarily. So yes, you can imagine some people spent a stupid amount of money on these previous events, and they're telling them to don't be upset, even though it's saying to channel your anger. They know that people aren't happy when they're not getting the drops that they want. This is the predatory microtransaction mindset that they want you to be in. They want you to be upset so that then you go over to that diamond shop and you buy all the extra bundles. You buy everything that you possibly can. You spend all the cash. You spend all your currency. You're still frustrated and you still want to spend more. This is everything wrong with mobile gaming. This isn't normal. It isn't normal to open up a video game, be angry at it, and then just be pushed or want to spend money to achieve anything. That's not normal. And people that typically play more mainstream games know this. We had the whole Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront thing that happened. But I feel like people that primarily or only play mobile games aren't really quite aware of just how bad this is to other people. This video is, I think if you showed this to some major anti-microtransaction pages and groups, they would be absolutely seething angry with this. Really quite amazing what they put together in such a short amount of time. But I have to say that just instead of it just being an actual loot box, it's glorified loot boxes on steroids is essentially what they've done. And again, some people have stickers, some people have a different beta version, so the players aren't even playing the same video game anymore. I'm so glad I stopped playing this game like 7 months ago now. It's shocking what these companies get away with. I don't think that this should be legal personally. I am absolutely against this 100 million %. But in case you don't believe me or think that I'm just like exaggerating about some of these things, there's tons that you can read online. And I know that I don't personally always trust Reddit. People make things up. There are tons of threads. I did come across this one in particular that sort of talks about this topic, about for those who work for a studio that develop mobile games, how do you switch off the guilt from predatory monetization practices? And inside this, they said, I've recently landed a job at a mobile game studio after being laid off from a AAA. The money is far better than I'll find elsewhere, but I can't help but feel a bit of discomfort about how predatory the project I'm working on is. It just feels that rather than creating an experience, it's just about draining money. It makes me a bit nauseous. Has anyone else been in this situation? And they said the people and the culture are fantastic, as is the pay, but part of me is thinking about an exit strategy. And this is what I said at the beginning. It's not like every single person working on these mobile games is a horrible person and they all hate the players. It's, as a whole, they're working for a company that doesn't respect the players. The shareholders, the directors, the ones making the decisions, they are not there for the players. And obviously these guys have to then actually program the things. They have to put these things together. They have to deliver on these tight schedules, these horrible monetization practices with sometimes very little bug fixing. And this guy got answers such as, don't turn off your brain, you should say things, continue the job search if it doesn't work out. I'm a game developer, maybe you shouldn't turn off that part of your brain. It's not inherently exploitive, but companies who are not exploitive have values that guide their monetization practices. But you can definitely tell which ones have some sort of moral code and which ones don't, really quite easily. And I would easily say 95+% of mobile game developers, they don't have a moral compass. I'm just saying. A lot of them are awful games compared to some of the quality you'll get from any other platform. And then if it's truly exploitive and you work there because it's a job you need to take right now, you can look to change that situation in the long term. There's a lot of things that were said in here, but there are some people that said, I left a AAA mobile development because I hated the games I was making. Team of 200+ making a top strategy game. Think Game of War. We had a literal gold purchase leaderboard. There were all kinds of ways to justify it. There were players who would send us messages about how much they loved the game, and who am I to say their enjoyment is invalid. The team in charge of monetization would tell us that players spend because they enjoy the game and see value in the money they spend. And that's probably true to an extent. And then on the other hand, the game is also designed to create fear in players about losing their crap by being attacked by other players to coerce them into spending. So I don't think any of that is acceptable, where they have paid for leaderboards, any kind of pay to win. It's easily avoidable. It's only scummy companies that do this in the first place, as we'll see in a second. And you can see that this particular person said that they didn't feel good about it, and they specifically left a studio entirely because of it. And I'm an artist, you kind of don't switch it off. The best option is to acknowledge that it's a form of revenue outside your control and it gets a roof over your, or keeps a roof over your head. So There's a lot. There are many, many things, and I suggest that you go and read through some of these. Again, some of these are probably made up because it's Reddit. There are probably some that are true as well. Some people saying there's no ethical consumption under capitalism. Fine, but I mean, we can make some decent things without making them completely abhorrent. But there's just a quick look at the developers, or people that claim to be developers on some of these mobile titles, literally telling you that, yes, some of them are scummy, and sometimes you've got to turn your brain off and not think about it if you want to get through your workday, which is not ideal for people working on these titles. But just in case you wanted some idea of what some potential mobile gaming monetization strategies are that aren't the clear ones, like loot boxes, it's things like having multiple sets of different currencies. They confuse the player. The player has to earn like 6 different types of currencies to then trade them over for different things, so that it obscures how much total payments they've actually made in the end, things like that. But you've got all these pages that talk about like in-app purchases, and you've got examples of different gem bundles, things like that. And ideally every single game should tell you what the drop odds are inside every single chest that has a drop chance in it. But some games still don't do that. Not naming any particular names that I'm sure some of you can guess. But a lot of these games also work on timers. But what these mobile games do is they give you the option to spend real-world currency to speed up the grind. So what ends up happening is that rather than that grind being a very normal, like general grind that is reasonable, they make the grind unreasonable on purpose so that they can push you to spend on these timer skips. Seems pretty clear, but people fall for this all the damn time. This isn't normal to spend real world money to skip something to enjoy playing a game. That is predatory. And again, there's so much in here. The other thing is in-app ads. You'll see that pretty much every free-to-play mobile game has ads littered everywhere. Some games are pretty much unplayable. Then you've got other games where on mobile they're unplayable because you'll get a pop-up ad every 20 seconds. But then you've got games that are mobile games that are also playable via the Windows Store that are still mobile games, but they're playable on Windows, which they're not allowed to do that on Windows, which is the only reason why any mobile game I ever played, I used to play via the Windows Store, because they're not allowed to put ads up every 20 seconds that, you know, they take up your whole screen and all of that jazz. So there's more sort of control that they have over these companies on Windows platforms, which is why so many of them focus on the mobile ones. And some of these can't even provide ads on Windows for many reasons, one of them being how predatory their actual ad systems are, but they won't tell you that. And then this article here says the thing is players don't really like ads, they tolerate them, plus there are always some players who really hate them. Some people will genuinely not play a game if they see a single ad inside it, and that is very true. Millions and millions of people, as soon as they see something like gem currency or purchase now packs, they uninstall. And I would say that that is more players than it is less. And if genuinely, if you look at mainstream games, think about all the people playing like League of Legends, Fortnite, any free-to-play game that is like a big mainstream game, they see a game like this and many of them will not even touch it. But then others, some crazy people like myself, sometimes they'll give these games a chance. And I have played both of these games, and they were both victims of monetization strategies that were abhorrent, both of them. See, I know a lot of these games very well, and I think that's the big problem. I know them very well. I taught people how to not spend in these games. I am basically the Antichrist. I'm essentially Satan to some of these game developers, because I don't want people spending lots of money on mobile games when they could get a better experience on a different platform for less money. That's the thing, people go into these games for free because they're, air quotes, free to play, but then they'll spend $5,000 on microtransactions. Like, you could have had so many amazing experiences on a different platform, a full-length game, an entire console for 7 consoles, and you've just been sitting here playing match 3 the whole time. But this article, for instance, talks about all these different types of monetization, hybrid monetization, which is a massive, massive problem. This is really not good for the players. This is a combination of in-app purchases, subscriptions, more and more and more layers of filth, essentially. And that is accepted as a normal now in the mobile gaming market. But they're talking about what is the best model for monetization for the companies. They don't offer anything in particular, but there is something that I found interesting in this article where it says, stay away from pay to win. And now, people have different definitions sometimes of what pay to win is, but the generally accepted pay to win description, you could look it up in Google, is when it offers an advantage to the players when they make a monetary purchase. Doesn't have to be something is only accessible via payment, but if it offers any advantage by paying any amount of money, it is pay to win. And this article says, there's a trap some developers fall for when utilizing in-app purchases. They design a monetization system that consists of paywalls that let players access the game fully. That forces players to spend if they want to advance in the game. Furthermore, this model allows players to use money to gain an advantage over other players. This approach veers to pay to win, which is despised by most players, and rightly so. So, despite the fact that it's despised so much, why do so many thousands, if not millions of players still take part in this when all of the others are saying, don't do it? This is a trash practice. It's not a good game. You're not proving anything. You're not learning anything. You're not testing your skill. You're just paying money. Why do so many do it? And it's because, especially for the young adults, they fall into these gambling practices really easily. They are very, very easy to get hooked on these things. And even these articles talking about monetization are telling them to stay away from this aspect of pay to win. But what do we have? Some games, some notable games that even I've played, that they do pay to win skins. Literal skins that you can only purchase with real money or a hell of a lot of saved resources, which is pretty much impossible to get unless you've spent money or you've been playing for like 10 years. And these things offer straight up bonuses that make your thing better than its previous form by like 50%. And games that do that are dead the moment they start doing it. Pay to win skins, things like that. You can have cosmetic skins. I have no issue with cosmetic skins. Pay to win skins, that's it, your game is dead. From the second you start doing that, you have become, in my opinion, scum of the earth level of gameplay. And then again, we've got more articles, including this one here, that talks about monetization in mobile games, in-app purchases, what they're about, pros of certain IAP models, high user retention, increased revenue. But then the cons of IAP models are things like potential pay-to-win frustration, barrier for user acquisition, high competition for conversion, whale dependency risk. This is a really big one that hits a lot of these companies, because you'll see as some of these companies get more and more predatory, their player base starts to dwindle because, yeah, people get sick of it. And some of them go harder and harder and harder because the whales spend more and more and more. But then the problem is their core player base that's spending is these specific whales. And if you lose some of these whales, that is enough to end some of these companies just by a few of these whales on their own. And this is something that should always be avoided, because obviously having more players spending a general amount of money is always going to be better, because then you'll have tons and tons of people. If you lose 50 of them, it doesn't really matter too much. But then they're going to focus most of their gameplay changes and things like that on these whales if they only care about the pure revenue that's coming in at the time. And if they don't think that they can change the game enough to make it actually accessible to normal people that aren't whales anymore, or to bring in enough new audience to make up for losing whales, they just focus on these whales and then they make the gameplay experience worse for everyone else. Yes, I do blame whales for a lot of poorly managed games because, again, they cater to these whales, and the whales do not always speak for the rest of the players. They don't speak for the 50 million people that decided not to play the game because of how horrible the monetization looks in the first place. And I've had this article here say, well, this study even that was saved for quite a while ago from PubMed. There's a lot of these coming out now, especially post-COVID. But you'll see that this one talks about the prediction, the prediction of problem gambling by demographics, gaming behavior, and psychological correlates among gacha gamers. A cross-sectional outline survey in Chinese young adults. So I'm sure there's been more done since then that I've not read through, but I've read through this one a few times. And essentially it says the cross-sectional data was collected in the first and fifth waves of the COVID-19 pandemic in Hong Kong. Participants who were aged 18 to 25 years and were playing gacha games over the past 12 months were recruited. So I imagine this is exclusively games like Hoyoverse ones, things like Genshin Impact, all of those style of games. There's tons of them now, but also any others with a similar format. And essentially, you can read through all of this. There's a lot of results. There are some interesting conclusions that came from this, if I can actually find it here somewhere. So if we read through this, it says that the present study provides empirical evidence to support the association between problem gambling and microtransaction, especially for gacha, which is the most popular type of video game microtransaction in Asia. The established regression model suggests that gacha gamers with higher risk of problem gambling tend to have greater stress, higher anxiety levels, spend more on gacha purchase, have more motives for gacha purchases, and engage in more gambling activities. In contrast to the extant literature, higher proportion of female participants in high-risk groups indicate that female gacha gamers are also at very high risk of becoming problem gamblers. So that is interesting, because, there's the whole shtick of, oh, no, we don't play video games. And I have to say that more females do play mobile games instead of, mainstream video games. It's just the way that it is at the moment. I kind of count them, kind of don't count them in the total stats. But for the sake of looking at problem gambling in these mobile gaming companies, we will include them. And yes, this is specifically for gacha, but you have to remember that loot boxes and all of those sorts of things really aren't too different. It's essentially just a different version of the RNG gambling system. And tons of these new studies that are coming out are pointing to the same thing, that getting these young adults hooked on this gacha loot boxing mechanic, this one, for instance, is leading to problem gambling IRL, not just in-game. It's causing problems beyond just what we're seeing in video games because they get hooked. When they open that loot box and they get that cool thing after spending $50, they get that massive rush. And, especially at those ages, 18 to 24 is what they looked, or 25, sorry, is what they looked at. These are young adults that are just getting into, sort of their working years. Some of them are probably still with mother and father, getting their weekly payments or whatever, and spending 100% of it on gacha games. I actually knew someone at some point, they started working, and then instantly they were spending upwards of 80 to 95% of their earnings on gacha loot boxes. Instantly, as soon as they got their first job, everything, absolutely, pretty much everything that they were making went straight into loot box gacha boxes. And that's not the only person. I know plenty of people on things like benefits. I know too many people, in fact, that are on benefits, and a good chunk of what they spend their government payments on is actually loot boxes. I know some people sometimes will be like, they can't do that. Surely they barely have any money as it is. But, some people, if they're not playing gacha games, they might be spending that on hair and nails, things that you might not expect them to spend it on. Some of them spend all of it on loot boxes or Genshin characters, believe it or not. There's so many stories that I could tell from people that I've known, very, very sad stories about some of the extreme amount of money that they have wasted on some of these games for virtually no benefit. Some of them have spent thousands and thousands and thousands, and within 6 months, everything they've ever bought is useless because of power creep. Everything. And that's the thing with these online mobile games, especially live service ones. They're going to keep getting updated, and you see power creep a lot in these games. Even the gacha ones, you know, how do they keep people spending? Well, if they make it so that the next new thing is more powerful and more powerful and more powerful, you're going to keep spending money. Or the whales are, at the very least. Other people dip out because they don't think it's worth it, but then the hardcore ones, they'll just keep spending. They're addicted. They have been taken advantage of, and that is what happens to them. So, we have this post here from Game Developer as well that we can look at. It talks about a lot of things, game design, and then it's how do I define predatory? So, a common mistake is to blame the tools rather than intention behind their use. Loot boxes, for example, aren't inherently predatory. They can add an exciting and rewarding surprise element when balanced with noble intentions. Even dynamic balancing or manipulated randomness can enhance player experience. In some card games, the odds of opening a pack are manipulated in favor of the player, such as slightly increasing the chance of getting a legendary card every time you don't get one. So the intention matters most when designing a battle pass. A designer must ask questions like how much faster should a premium player progress compared to a free-to-play, and how long should it take for a player to finish the battle pass. I've seen designers balance it fairly, like by requiring 30 minutes of daily play to complete the fast track or $5 to unlock the premium, but I've also seen designers create an illusion of achievability by giving lots of free progress early on, but then locking the juicy prize behind a $50 paywall or a ridiculous amount of grind, which is designed to frustrate 98% of players and milk the 2% of whales. And that is essentially what it is. You know, these games where they are, air quotes, free to play, but in order to achieve the same as someone that spends, let's say, $10, you would have to put in 20 times the amount of time. And sometimes what that means is that if this requires them to continuously save up currencies to then spend all at once on a particular event, which games such as some music games do this, it means that the paying player is always ahead regardless. Because if the paying player puts in the same amount of hours as the free-to-play player and they're spending on top, you will never, ever catch them as a free-to-play player. So this idea that this game could ever be, air quotes, free-to-play simply doesn't exist. Because, again, if you had the exact same skill level, exact same player, playing the same thing, but one of them spends and one of them doesn't, the playing player wins every single time. And that's what it is. They want to frustrate all of the other players by making them grind for a ridiculous amount of time or just never ever getting what they want. And then it forces all of the whales or the other spenders to spend that money. And that is predatory. They know that it's predatory. They do it because it's predatory and it makes them money. They could easily opt to create gameplay that doesn't revolve around this. Easily. They could just make a core, intriguing, fun gameplay mechanic like, you know, those other live service games, like you've got the Fortnites and stuff. Fortnite might not be your cup of tea, but, you know, that people can go into that game for nothing and just play thousands of hours, and they're never stopped from doing that. They're never pushed to make purchases. You don't have to if you just want to enjoy the base game for what it is. But these other games, everything that you do in these games will push you to want to spend money. And when you're playing these games, it's about knowing when that's happening and pushing back and not doing it. Because if they're free to play, you can get a lot of value out of these games free to play. You might have a really crappy time playing them free to play even, and if you're not enjoying yourself, just stop playing. You don't have to waste your time playing games that you're not enjoying, that frustrate you, that don't bring you any enjoyment, when you could play other free-to-play games out there that are tons of fun. Man, we even had Poke MMO. It's not even an official game. Poke MMO was completely free, available on mobile, it was available on browser, everything. You could play millions of hours with absolutely nothing stopping you. Devs could, in fact, do that if they wanted. Obviously, we want them to make money, so that's why I think that things like, you know, cosmetic skins and things like that are absolutely fine, personally. Even in games that are free-to-play like Apex, people complain at the skin prices, even though the skins are completely cosmetic only. And they did the same with Overwatch with some of how they used to do their skins. But I've seen the depths of the mobile gaming sphere, so cosmetic skins are like, I don't even consider them a problem whatsoever. They could charge $700 for a cosmetic skin and I would not care anymore. What I do care about is locking actual gameplay mechanics behind these horrific paywalls, these horrific predatory microtransaction systems full of loot boxes or super loot box systems like this. This should never, ever be allowed in the gaming sphere. It's unacceptable, completely. And the fact that while they're doing all of this, their basic event structures get worse, their bug fixing gets worse, their ad structures get worse. It's just a recipe for disaster for an incredibly unhappy player base, and maybe a few happy whales, but they don't speak for the rest of the players. So we also have this quick article here from the CyberHost VPN website, which is just a quick article talking about microtransactions as well. Why are they so controversial? And they state here that microtransaction business model is contentious, and for good reason, because peer-reviewed research from 2022 showed that microtransactions play a major role in gambling and gambling disorders. Games are psychologically engineered to get you to spend as much money as possible. So shouldn't psychologists help people with addictions instead of exploiting them? Game companies don't think so. So despite the damage game companies cause to people by creating intentionally addictive products, very few of them question the ethics. So how do they catch you? They're talking about use of the word free and things like that. So it entices you to spend real money to enhance your actual experience. So compared to how fun the game is when you throw dosh at it, the free version is dull. And then why not just stop playing? When you realize the game isn't free, you're already deeply invested. At this point, it's easier to justify spending a few bucks than to pull yourself away. As crafty and deceptive as this business model is, it isn't stupid and it's intentional. I mean, anyone that knows anything about these games, has played them a long time, or knows anyone in the industry could tell you that easily, but I think there are far too many people unaware of this still, even to this day. People that are new to gaming, people that only look at mobile games as their hobby, they don't realize how bad this looks to everyone else. And you can play any game you want. If you are enjoying yourself, if you are not wasting your life playing it, like taking away real life opportunities to play, 100% I support you. But why would you play these games and spend tons of money instead of playing any of these games? Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 this year was fantastic. The studio loves their players. The studio itself did so much. Claire Obscure Expedition 33 may win Game of the Year. Either of them could win that. That came from quite a small team compared to everything else, and people absolutely love that game. I don't understand how a person can sit there and spend $5,000 on Genshin Impact in 2025 when they have all of these options out there that they've never even touched before. And now some people in some countries, they only have, or in certain situations even, you might only have the option of a mobile for some reason. Fine, maybe that is the case. But if you have any opportunity to invest in a better platform, or at least trying out some other games that aren't just mobile exclusive, even if they're on, PC, if they're free to play games, or just any of these console games or Steam games, whatever it is, if you can go and try some of these instead, it will be so worth your time. There are so many good games that have released this year already, just in 2025, and there are so many games coming up in the latter half of this year as well. There's even the new Donkey Kong coming in just a few days. There is so much good just in this list here. There's some that I would say I don't agree with on this best video games list of 2025 for a few reasons. But every single one of these games is better than anything that you are going to get that is a mobile exclusive mobile game. 100%. Even the worst game out of this entire list here is better than anything that you're going to be getting on mobile. I'm sorry, it's just true. You could play the worst thing that has come out in the last 5 years on console that is like a mid-sized game, and it will be better than anything that you're getting on mobile right now. So I really just wanted to go through this for anyone that has been around here for a while or new even to here. This sort of thing is not acceptable. It's not normal, And most people avoid these games for reasons exactly like this. Just look at all these different loot boxes, look at these different currency systems, and look at the way that these companies treat their players. Literally, oh, don't be sad. You can spend lots of money to make up for your bad RNG. You can't, because you were never given a pity system. There is no pity. You're never guaranteed anything. So, you know, I appreciate them trying to make fun of the situation. I feel really bad for them putting this together and trying to make light-hearted fun out of this. But this topic is not one that people are going to take lightly. Not myself. It's just way too predatory, way too horrible of a system. And I want these things to die. The sooner that these business practices die, the sooner that mobile gaming becomes an acceptable thing once again. It was at one point with the likes of the beautiful, wondrous Flappy Bird and Magikarp Jump, but this crap, this needs to go now.